My name is Isharna Walsh. I'm the founder and CEO of Coral, which is your trusted guide to a happier, healthier, intimate life.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Herstory TV and the Herstory podcast. This is Gertrude Matcha here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. I am graced with the presence of yet another amazing young woman coming to us all the way from Australia this time. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Isharna Walsh. I'm the founder and CEO of Coral, which is your trusted guide to a happier, healthier, intimate life. You might be wondering what that means. Essentially, sex and intimacy is a really foundational part of our health and happiness as humans, but it's not something that we're encouraged to work on the same way we do other aspects of our health and happiness. We just expect it to work. And actually, for most of us, it's not just working. The vast majority of people are not totally satisfied with their sex lives. And Coral is your way of really understanding how your body and mind works in relation to sex and intimacy, as well as providing evidence-based interventions for how you can actually improve your life. I'm 32, about to be 33 years old next week, actually. I'm half Sri Lankan, half Australian, born in Sri Lanka, raised in Australia, have spent the last years in the US building the business, founded that, getting into tech, and then founded the company about 3 years ago.
Wow. Wow. You've done a lot for someone so young.
Thank you.
What was the inspiration for you to create this digital opportunity tool to help people? It's very unusual what you've done. Was it your background? Were you always in tech? Are you a psychologist? What was the motivation that got you to start this business?
Yeah, so it's sort of twofold. One is very much linked to, personal ambition and how I want to spend my life and time. And then the second is very much related to the problem itself. So I did a lot of soul searching in my 20s about, what are we here for and why, and how do I want to spend my life? And I realized that I really wanted to start businesses with social impact. And I saw actually after working in mostly government that if you could combine profit, incentive, and social impact, that can be a really quick way to affect change, whereas government and NGOs can be a little bit slower in the way that they move. And so I was really motivated to think of ideas where you can combine social impact and profit, basically. And in parallel to that sort of thinking was my own journey in relation to sexuality. I got a few years into a long-term relationship, recognized that sex just wasn't as great anymore, and we had no idea what was normal. We had no idea how to talk about it. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do at that point, which was pick up a book. And I read a book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, which really opened my mind and eyes to different ways of thinking about and experiencing sex and my relationship to my own sexuality. And so that started a multi-year journey for me of exploration in terms of books and courses and speaking to people a lot more openly. And through that journey, I realized firstly that, yes, there is so much we can do that affects the quality of our experience and our own relationship to ourselves in relation to sex and intimacy. But secondly, and really importantly, that the world sets us up to fail in relation to sex and intimacy. Everything in our context and our culture really makes it difficult for us to create our best sex lives. And for concrete examples, I'm talking about things like porn, patriarchal narratives around how our bodies should work, unrealistic expectations that are fed to us through the media, a lack of education. And so as a result of that, most of us are actually really suffering. So I saw this incredibly big opportunity.
You froze again.
Oh, I was like, yeah.
So it seems to me that you were able to find solutions at a very early age in your life. You know, a lot of women get into relationships, they get married, and once they're there, they actually feel quite stuck. They don't know how to talk to their partners. They don't know what they need personally, because it starts with you, right? And
Mhm.
understanding your own body and how you get satisfaction so you can transfer that to someone else. What exactly does this app do? Give me a few pointers to how people can learn more about themselves using your platform.
Yeah, so essentially we provide the sort of sex positive, pleasure centric sex ed that you should have received and never did. And then we combine that with a normalizing community. So you can actually, through polls and discussion forums, understand other people's experiences, and it normalizes your own and also exposes you to a range of different experiences that we don't usually get access to because we're not openly talking in a vulnerable way about sex. And
Yes.
then the third part of our modality or method is exercises. So we have guided exercises ranging from, say, a written exercise about sharing fantasies or dirty talk vocabulary, to
Yes.
guided self-pleasure, to simply guided meditations to allow you to experience pleasure in any way, because that's something that can be quite difficult for us to allow ourselves to do,
Yes.
to guided partner activities that you can do together with a partner to spice things up or bring some novelty in.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely fascinating. And so, what has been the reaction, the response from the marketplace since you launched?
Really positive, actually. So we initially launched with a sort of 1.0 product in November 2019. And what we see is that there is really definitely demand for this, and there is willingness to pay. So we have over 350,000 users now.
Wow.
And a significant number of paying subscribers as well. So you can experience the app as a free version with limited content, or you pay to get access to the full experience.
Wow. That is
Mm.
just fantastic. And is it only available in Australia? Is it in other parts of the world? How far?
No, no, it's available globally. So the team is based in the US, and I usually am too. COVID, we're all over the place. So majority of our users are in the US, but we have users globally. So if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you can download it from the respective stores.
Okay. So, as a young entrepreneur in tech,
Yes.
if you look back at your career to get to the point where you are now, and if you could have a conversation with the younger you when you were setting out on this journey,
Yeah.
what nuggets of wisdom would you tell that young woman?
Chill out. Just like it's gonna be fine. No, I think I and maybe this is part of why I'm an entrepreneur, right? Is like I haven't really ever bowed to pressures of just doing what society expects me to do. So I think the one thing I would say to myself is, like, don't feel as anxious about that. I think when I was younger, I was still like, not doing what I was meant to do, but I felt anxious about the fact that I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. Um, Whereas now I'm like so grateful that I haven't followed a conventional path.
That is fantastic. And it makes such a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, it's interesting because I see some of my peers struggle with a similar thing of like wanting to spend their time in the way that is self-actualizing, right? So deriving purpose from work. And that's what I've really strived to do and managed to create a sustainable path to doing that. And so I'm super like encouraging and positive for it, but I also realize that that's such a privilege that some people might not be able to afford. So I'm always quite hesitant to actually give advice on this stuff because it's so personal and dependent on so many things.
But at least you're setting an example of what's possible.
Yeah.
You might not have to articulate it in words, but people are watching you, they're seeing what you're doing, and you become the path that somebody else can follow.
Right. And I have to say that, particularly in relation to venture capital funding, is one thing that beyond my actual work, I find very rewarding. So we've raised publicly over $3 million from investors, and hopefully we'll raise significantly more this year or early next year. So we'll see how that goes. But, you know, I speak quite publicly about the difficulties in fundraising as a minority female entrepreneur, let alone in the sexuality space. And I recognize that it's just going to be harder for me as a woman, and it's just going to be less lucrative for me as a woman because my company won't be valued as high, and I will have to take less money than, you know, a male entrepreneur with exactly the same business.
Yeah.
But I hope that paves a path for future women.
Yes. Yes. So have you managed to do that mostly in Australia, or was the move to the United States a part of your strategy?
It was all the US. So I moved to the US about 3 or 4 years before I started Coral, because I was fascinated by technology and how it was changing our world and how much it was, at the time that I was thinking about it, so sort of 2012, 13, this was about when e-commerce was becoming way more popular. Social media was starting to take off in terms of really dominating our mobile experience. You know, smartphone adoption was much more prevalent. And it was really impacting, like Uber was starting to become much more widespread. It was really impacting the way that we behaved in our day-to-day life.
Yes.
And so I was just following that curiosity. I didn't know that I would end up where I am. That was not like a long-term
goal or mission. Yeah. But you followed your promptings, you followed your instinct. A lot of people will kind of sense it and they don't trust themselves and they hold back. But you stepped into the abyss and now you're reaping the rewards of that. Absolutely fascinating. So if you were to give advice to someone else who wants to go into the tech space, someone like me, for instance, I'm trying to build an app based on the Herstory model, all around diversity and inclusion. I have no idea what I'm doing. What advice would you give somebody who is not in that world?
Well, okay. Gosh. Well, it depends what you want to do. Like if you're interested in a career in technology, it's very different to being a technology entrepreneur, right? So it's like if you're just interested in getting to know, like learning how to be a developer or learning how to be a product manager or something like that, it's a very different set of advice to like, I want to start my own tech company. With tech companies, either you need to have a fair amount of capital yourself to develop the product, or you need to be able to convince someone else to give you a lot of money to develop the product. I'm not from a wealthy background at all, so I had to convince other people to give me money. And so really understanding the dynamics of that market environment is the first step to being able to actualize your vision. So, you know, venture capital investors are not going to back a business that they can't see going to $1 billion valuation, right? So that's the first step. And then they need to be convinced that you're the person to do it. And so there's quite a lot in that to unpack. But building technology is way harder than I thought it was. I don't know. I mean, if I had known then what I know now, like I might not have actually had the confidence to go for it. So I'm kind of glad that I was blissfully ignorant. But
I love that.
Yeah, it's really hard.
That was a blessing.
It was.
Fascinating.
Technology is way harder than you think it is.
Have so inspired me. My very first career was in technology. I was a first generation coder.
Oh,
I
cool.
programmed computers in BASIC, Pascal, and Fortran back in the day. Hated my
Right.
job. I hated being a coder. I ended up in systems
Yeah.
analysis and design. And I have built businesses that are based on building databases my whole career ever since. So
I can see how that framework of thinking would be super helpful as you're thinking about a business.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's been such a pleasure connecting with you today. You are
Thank
really
you.
an inspiration
I really
in terms
appreciate
of
that.
what is possible. And I just love the fact that you didn't know how hard it was going to be and you went anyway. Because I think if you had had too much knowledge, you wouldn't have ventured that far, right?
Yeah. I think as, and again, particularly as women, we deal with a lot of like imposter syndrome and confidence and all that sort of thing. And I think my sense of belief in my own ability might have been less if I'd known how hard it was going to be.
I love it.
But I'm here. So, that wouldn't have been the right thing to think anyway.
Thank you so much for this amazing interview. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been a phenomenal week in my life. I have met women from all over the world, different genres, different careers. Tune in again tomorrow when I come back with yet another fascinating lady from a different part of the world. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.